Iron Man Armored Adventures debuted in the US on April 24, 2009, and despite its 3D CGI animation, the show was well received thanks to the popularity of its 2008 live-action movie. The decision to turn all the main characters into teenagers was certainly unusual, but still, the show managed to run for 52 episodes and adapt many Iron Man comic stories effectively. However, the show was eventually canceled. The reasons for its cancellation are a bit complicated, but we'll explain everything later in the video, so stay tuned. The show centers around billionaire Riz King Tony Stark and his superhero alter ego, Iron Man. As Iron Man, he battles multiple villains, some famous ones including Stain, Mandarin, Crimson Dynamo, and Black Knight. Balancing his superhero life and being a teenager isn't easy, so Tony gets help from his friends James Rhodes and Pepper Potts in fighting crime, while dealing with the everyday struggles of being a teen. Season 1. The story opens up with Tony Stark creating his greatest invention, the Iron Man armor. However, before he can show it to his dad, Howard Stark, tragedy strikes. Howard dies in a plane crash while investigating an ancient Chinese ring. Fortunately, Tony survives the crash, but his heart is damaged and the Iron Man suit he built implants a device in his chest to keep him alive. Meanwhile, Obadiah Stane takes over Howard's company, Stark International, and starts using Tony's inventions to make weapons. Tony moves in with his friend James Rhodes and his parents. The billionaire lifestyle turns to middle class as he starts attending school, where he meets a girl named Pepper Potts. She tells him that Stain is being investigated by the FBI for his possible involvement in Howard's death. Hearing this, Tony puts on his Iron Man suit to investigate and stops a runaway train from crashing into Stark Tower, so the media starts calling him Iron Man. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure called Mandarin, who has another ancient ring, vows to get the ring that is now in Stain's possession. Stain has taken over Stark International and is turning Tony and his dad's inventions into weapons. Even worse, Tony now thinks Stain might be behind the attack that killed his father. As Iron Man, he wants answers, but first, he has to face the Earth Movers, his peaceful inventions that Stain has turned into giant weapons. Xinjiang, Mandarin, is fighting with his stepson, Jean Khan, over who should have the powerful McLuhan rings. Stain wants the technology of the Iron Man suit to use as a weapon and make billions of dollars. On the other side, while Iron Man fights the Earth Movers, his friend Rhodes helps him by talking to him through a headset from his bedroom. Pepper interrupts Ruddy and says she will figure out what they're up to. Honestly, I would give her the award for being the most annoying bitch of the year. Eventually, Tony defeats the Earth Movers and Mandarin appears near Obadiah and takes the ring from him. The Mandarin tries to kill Iron Man with the ring but fails and teleports back to his lair. Back at his armory, Tony realizes his father was right. The rings have energy and must be a form of technology. At the Mandarin's lair, it is revealed that Jean Khan has become Mandarin and plans to find all the rings. Jean Khan, as Mandarin, starts attacking the Magia Crime Syndicate. Meanwhile, Tony comes to his door with information on the McLuhan rings, which leads Jean to enroll in Tony's school. At the armory, Rose practices controlling the Iron Man armor through remote control. Later, Magia henchmen Killer Shrike and Unicorn kidnap Tony, Jean, and Pepper in a plot to undermine Jean's stepfather and his Tong Triad. After a long battle, Rhodes flies the Iron Man armor to Tony. Unbeknownst to Jean and Pepper, Tony suits up and they manage to escape. Pepper becomes really thankful to Tony, and Tony and Jean become friends. However, Killer Shrike and Unicorn can't be found. Tony puts the research on the McLuhan rings on hold. Jean Khan, as Mandarin, has Killer Shrike and Unicorn captured and tortured. Tony is becoming obsessed about getting Stain. As Iron Man, he teams up with Blizzard, the former cryogenics expert named Donnie Gill, who becomes deformed thanks to Stain. Meanwhile, Rhodes suspects that Blizzard is evil, especially after he and Iron Man start collecting parts to what he calls a weapon. He fights with Tony over the issue and claims that Tony has to do it without him and leaves. As both finish getting their parts for the weapon, Tony realizes that he is willing to hurt innocents to get what he wants, and they both fight. Luckily, he manages to get away safely while Blizzard goes after Stain. After some modifications to his armor and an apology to Rhodes, Tony becomes Iron Man and goes to save Stain from Blizzard's attack. He tackles Blizzard just before he freezes Stain and they fight, resulting in a massive storm caused by Blizzard. Fortunately, Iron Man stops the storm, resulting in Blizzard being cryogenically frozen. The climax doesn't end here because some threats by Stain causes Iron Man to tell him that your time is coming. Pepper's father gets critically hurt on the job, while Tony creates a new armored suit, a Silver Centurion. While in the hospital, Pepper's dad utters the word Mr. Fix, which leads Pepper running Mr. Fix through the FBI database. However, Mr. Fix notices this and sends armed men to take care of her, including his cybernetic henchman, Whiplash. After some running and some help from Rhodes, she gets saved by Iron Man. Much to her surprise, she finds out that Iron Man is actually Tony. Back at Rhodes' house, Whiplash attacks and makes a hole in his house. Pepper and Rhodes run while Iron Man fights but unfortunately fails. Mr. Fix orders Whiplash to go after Pepper. However, Iron Man comes back in his new Silver Centurion suit and sends Whiplash into an electrical transformer, which explodes, leaving nothing but one of Whiplash's whips. Afterwards, the annoying talkative Pepper decides that she will fight crime with Roddy and Tony. 2 years ago, an astronaut named Ivan Vanko was lost in space while observing the sun. In the present, he crashes down in the middle of New York City and is alive thanks to the massive environmental suit he is wearing named the Crimson Dynamo. It is designed to survive the harshest conditions imaginable, but after years in space, all Vanko wants is revenge for the people who left him behind. Meanwhile, Iron Man is having a hard time trying to fight the tough suit and decides to use brains over brawn. However, even after that, he is just getting toyed with Crimson Dynamo, so with no options left, he flies all the way to Project Pegasus just before Dynamo. There he meets Harkov and learns about Dynamo's schematics. Shockingly, it turns out that Ivan was able to survive through anything, even anything his armors could dish out. Easily making through the security, Vanko is finally there. Holding him off at max power for a while, Iron Man is killing himself with the extreme power of the Dynamo against him. But as he runs low on power, Pepper manages to locate Vanko's family and peacefully resolves the matter. Tony is still failing school and is cast in the lead role of Hamlet, a character ironically facing the same struggles as him. He learns from a holographic will of his father that he wanted him to have a normal life rather than letting the company be a burden on him. However, Arthur Parks, a criminal underling for the Magia along with 2 other grunts, are stealing Stark International equipment from one of their trucks. He drops one of the crates and smashes it open, revealing a strange piece of equipment which catches Arthur's interest. Arthur puts it on and activates it out of curiosity, which promptly causes an explosion and leaves only a smoking hole where he was standing. The next day, Arthur becomes the living laser and uses his newfound abilities to rob a bank and strike it big. Iron Man arrives on the scene and offers medical help if he surrenders, but Laser Boy refuses to back down. The joke's on him because Iron Man easily catches him off guard and knocks him out, confiscating his equipment and leaving him for the police. He also criticizes Arthur for being so simple-minded that the only thing he could think to do with his powers was rob a bank. While in prison, Arthur's body becomes violently hot and then it explodes, destroying the cell he was being held in. After discovering he no longer needs the harness in order to utilize his powers, he escapes and takes control of a gigantic television in Times Square. He then announces that he will turn the entire city into a pile of ash unless Iron Man agrees to a rematch. During the rematch, the living laser says that he took Iron Man's advice to heart and now has a bigger goal, being the man who fried Iron Man. After an intense fight, Iron Man figures out his weakness. His energy frequency makes him immune to his repulsors. He manages to match the frequency of the living laser's energy signature, which allows for Iron Man's attacks to affect him. After an attack from his unibeam, the living laser explodes into thousands of particles and disperses across the night sky. Tony, Rhodey, Pepper, and Jean search the ancient ruins where Tony's father first found one of the Makluan rings. They discover a carving that explains the history of the rings. It reveals that each ring comes with a test established by the first Mandarin to determine the worthiness of his hair and activate the ring's power. In this case, the test being one of wisdom, Jean assumes the key lies in choosing a book over a sword, but this only ends up bringing Stone Dread Knight statues to life and splitting the group. Knocking Rhodey unconscious, Jean attempts to defeat the statues as Mandarin. Separated from each other, Iron Man and Mandarin enter a heated battle with the terrible Dread Knights. Though both are far stronger than the Dread Knights, their regeneration abilities and them being infinite hard-press them both. When it all seems lost, Tony figures out they need the book. However, when the book is proved useless, Tony and Pepper realize the sword is the key to passing the test. After saying the Chinese word for end, the Dread Knights deactivate. They then escape the collapsing temple and discover the sword contains a map to the next ring. At a school science fair, Tony is approached by Dr. Basil Sandhurst on behalf of AIM and is tricked into making a mind/machine interface work. He is one of the scientists working on the MODOK project. Dr. Sandhurst approaches Tony to get him to join AIM during the Tomorrow Academy's job fair. He's so desperate that he allows Tony access to the controller discs which will be used in the organic incorporation of MODOK. The Maniac then activates the control discs and enslaves Rhodes, Pepper, Happy, and Jean. However, Dr. Sandhurst, who now goes by the controller, is then defeated by Iron Man and swears revenge against him. To keep his position with AM, Basil explains to the Scientist Supreme that he is still needed to help with the MODOK project, When Obadiah starts acting strangely, Iron Man investigates and discovers that Obadiah is being impersonated by a villain named Madame Mask. Madame Mask causes him trouble by destroying his art gallery and his private garage at the pier. When Iron Man discovers her and threatens to call the police, she copies her appearance and impersonates him as a thief, causing him to be wanted by the police. After her father ignores her again, she decides that if making him lose the things that he loves doesn't free up some time with her, then she'll get rid of everything else, including Iron Man. She fights Iron Man at the train yards, however. When she attempts to kill him, she accidentally changes faces in front of the police, forcing her to run. She barely catches on to the ledge of a building, and as Iron Man approaches her, her mask falls off, revealing her face as the daughter of Obadiah Stane. Not wanting his friend to go to jail, Iron Man lets her off with a warning. Roddy becomes concerned over Tony's plans to increasingly weaponize the Iron Man armor using reverse-engineered supervillain tech. Stane offers to bail out Project Pegasus in return for the Crimson Dynamo armor, which is upgraded to capture Iron Man, resulting in a pitched battle in the middle of the city that leaves him furious at the reckless endangerment of innocent lives. Having lost the battle and fallen unconscious, Iron Man is brought to Project Pegasus. Harkov and Stane then begin to analyze the armor. With the help of Rhodey and Pepper, Tony manages to escape, only to return in the Dynamo Buster armor. He then uses a virus called Technovore to destroy Pegasus' advanced Ea Delphi, both to defeat the Dynamo and prevent Stane from acquiring detailed technical data on Iron Man. Tony is excited that he finally defeated one of his enemies, saying that what they need to win is better weapons, better tech, and to stay ahead. Rhodey, on the other hand, reminds Tony that there is a line between good and evil, and that he just came close to crossing it. Though successful, there is an unexpected consequence. Back at Project Pegasus, having consumed all available data, the Technovore is close to burning itself out just as Tony planned. But unknown to Tony, one of Pegasus' projects were computer-controlled nanobots. Using the connection, Technovore takes control of the nanobots, abandoning the computer. It forms a body and says one word, consume. Tony and Jean locate the Temple of Courage and unleash Ultimo, the third McLuhan Ring's guardian in the Temple of Courage. This makes Rhodey and Pepper furious as they are left out even though Tony does so to protect them. When trying to claim the ring, Jean ends up awakening the ring's ancient robot guardian Ultimo, whose design bears a striking resemblance to Ultron. When it awakens, it comes after whoever has the ring it was guarding, walking all the way from Greenland to New York to get it. Tony, as Iron Man, tries to attack it, but every attempt just makes it grow bigger. He tries to give the ring back to it, but it keeps attacking because it attacks if he's holding a weapon. Since Tony's entire suit is a weapon, Tony defeats it by turning off his suit because it is the only courageous thing to do. Ultimo shrunk to its original size and bestows the ring to Iron Man. Tony upgrades the Iron Man exoskeleton software and proceeds without testing it to clash with a newly equipped Whiplash, who now has a flying disc and better chains, thanks to Mr. Fix. A momentary relapse in the armor's functionality is ignored, but makes critical changes to his suit. The suit has the ability to detect enemy power signatures, and when Tony attempts to find and not fight Mr. Fix, the armor displays sentient ability, putting itself into attack mode. It easily overpowers Whiplash with perfect maneuvering and, to the horror of Tony, destroys the facility that Mr. Fix had occupied. Thinking that the armor had killed Mr. Fix and Whiplash, Tony and Rahadi decide that the armor needs to be taken care of. The suit craftily lures Tony away and then attacks Rhodey. The armor decides that Tony's danger-seeking behavior is not healthy for him and tells Tony that he is to be confined within the armor at all times. Tony resists and damages the armor. Rhodey grabs a repulsor gauntlet and Tony jumps in the way of the blast the armor directs at Roddy. Tony goes into cardiac arrest and the armor sacrifices itself to preserve its creator's life. Arthur Parks, the living laser, wakes up inside the SHIELD orbital station, which gives him the ability to fire himself at targets of his choice. He takes the world hostage, demanding Iron Man, but Nick Fury and SHIELD have something to say about that. When Iron Man tries to stop him, he runs into Nick Fury and SHIELD, who inform Iron Man not to get involved. Iron Man flies to the station to fight the laser, but Fury gives him a 20-minute window in which to defuse the situation before he sets a self-destruct in the station off in order to prevent the living laser from destroying New York. Iron Man eventually tricks the laser into capturing himself, and SHIELD takes him into custody, with Fury threatening to destroy Iron Man if he ever does more harm than good. A hit has been placed on Tony Stark, and the Ghost has come to collect. Tony cannot even see the invisible and untouchable Ghost coming. He's got a guardian angel, whether he likes it or not. It's Madame Mask, telling him that her father hired the Ghost to kill Tony, and she posed as Tony to keep him away from the real Tony. And while Madame Mask battles the Ghost to protect him, Tony finds himself pushing away Roddy and Pepper to protect them. However, when Whitney is captured by the Ghost, he has to turn to the very best friends he pushed away for help. Afterwards, when Iron Man confronts Ghost, he tells him it was stupid of him capturing Obadiah Stane's daughter, Whitney, and realizing that he was not hired by him. Eventually, Whitney pays the Ghost off to stop hunting Tony. Pepper realizes if she wants to keep Tony as a friend, she has to learn to start liking Jean Khan, who has been busy trying to negotiate peace as Mandarin between his Tong forces and the Maja. Pepper ends up in the middle of the conflict. In order to save her from Count Nefaria and the Black Knight, without revealing his secret, Jean calls Iron Man. When Iron Man interrupts the meeting, the Tong and Magia fight, leaving Iron Man against Black Knight. In the end, Jean saves Pepper, Count Nefaria, and Black Knight get arrested, and the Tong soldiers find out that the man they've been following is not Mandarin. The Technovore virus that Tony unleashed against Project Pegasus didn't burn out as intended. It's acquired nanotechnology and is running loose in the Project Pegasus complex, assimilating any technology it can get its hands on. Meanwhile, Nick Fury sends some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to bring Tony to repair the helicarrier's engines. Rhodey goes into the Pegasus facility to check out a disturbance, only to run into Technovore. When it gets a hold of Rhodey's earpiece, it calls Tony so it can absorb the Iron Man armor. After Kharkov, who was hiding in the building, fled, Tony arrives. After exhausting every option, Tony activates the armor's self-destruct sequence and abandons the armor and runs for it. The explosion destroys Technovore. Meanwhile, somewhere in Russia, Kharkov leaves a plane. But unknown to him, a microscopic cell of Technovore's nanomite body still remains inside the fabric of his coat. Jean daydreams about his childhood, recalling his mother telling him about his Mandarin heritage and the ring's power. Snapping out of it, he recounts Mandarin legend to Tony, Rhodey, and Pepper at the first temple they visited. After he leaves, Pepper insists they should tell Jean that Tony is Iron Man and let him join the team. Tony agrees, needing Jean's help as they track down the next ring. However, Jean is busy and misses their calls. The friends head to the temple by a volcano but are disappointed Tony didn't wait for Jean. Inside, Pepper and Rhodey argue and accidentally trigger the next test, causing Rhodey to be engulfed in flames. Meanwhile, Jean recalls more of Mandarin legend. Mandarin wanted a worthy heir to the Makluan rings and created tests worldwide, including the fiery test. Back in the temple, Rhodey attacks the others, forcing Tony to suit up. In a panic, Pepper calls Jean but gets disconnected. Jean tries calling Tony without success, and then activates his rings and teleports. Rhodey's powers start to activate the volcano and others globally. Pepper attempts to solve the puzzle but transforms into a fire being. Jean remembers his stepdad killing his mother for the first ring. He teleports to Rhodey's room for clues, hiding from Mrs. Rhodes. Rhodey returns to normal and Iron Man flies him back to the temple, finding the transformed Pepper. Tony, unable to fight back, calls Jean, who advises throwing both ice and coal into the light. Pepper exclaims, "You are worthy," and returns to normal. In the garage, Tony offers the ring to Jean, who resists. Tony tries the ring but can't use it. Back home, Jean recalls his mother's words about the ring's power. The living laser is dying and Tony is trying to save his life, but fate has other plans. The Ghost has been hired by AIM to steal the laser. When the Ghost comes, Tony realizes that it was AIM who hired the Ghost to kill him. AIM needs him to be a power source for their greatest creation, and when Iron Man arrives to rescue the laser, he's too late. The mental organism designed only for conquest is online. The controller is then knocked unconscious by MODOK, who foresees that the controller will turn against AIM to improve his controller discs. He then attacks the Scientist Supreme and declares himself the new leader of AIM. Not even Iron Man can withstand MODOK's mental power, and MODOK immediately brings Iron Man to his knees and takes information from him, including his secret identity. When the living laser hears MODOK say that Tony is Iron Man, he realizes that Iron Man had been trying to help him the whole time. Therefore, just as MODOK is about to finish Iron Man, he joins the fight. Working together, the two overpower MODOK and cause his memory system to crash, so he forgets all the information he took from Iron Man. However, after the battle, it becomes too late to save the laser. Iron Man thanks the redeemed living laser for saving him, and then he disappears. Meanwhile, after learning from Nick Fury that he made weapons for S.H.I.E.L.D., Tony loses faith in his father. However, Robert Rhodes reveals that Howard gave up making weapons and started helping people when Tony was born just to become someone his son could be proud of, which restores Tony's belief in his father. Jean, Pepper, Happy, and Whitney drive for the mall in Jean's limo. They mean to pick up Tony and Rhodey, but get interrupted as they see Iron Man clumsily flying by. They choose to follow him, but Iron Man crashes. 20 minutes earlier, Tony tries to persuade a nervous Rhodey to take the armor out for a spin. His terrible flying soon sends him crashing into everything in sight, and he crashes, ejects from the armor, and tries to hide as his friends arrive. Excited, Happy dons the armor thinking as always that Iron Man is a robot and flies off. He proves to be a natural at controlling it and flies excitedly through the city performing aerial stunts. Tony attempts to take over the armor by remote control, causing Happy to crash into the Tong's headquarters, where the Unicorn and Killer Shrike are breaking in. Jean rushes in to intervene, again compromising his torn interests, for Happy is excited to be fighting supervillains and Tong ninjas. Killer Shrike and Unicorn are attempting to blow up the Tong vault for the money. Tony reasons that the bombs they acquired from Mr. Fix will have a quantum effect, making all 10 of them able to level the entire city. He persuades the villains to run off, and Happy rips off a bomb, breaking it in half, luckily stopping it. Tony finally tricks Happy into abandoning the armor, saying that it is battle damaged and will explode. Happy escapes the building and Iron Man flies off by remote control, seemingly exploding in the sky above them. Frightened, Pepper asks him if the armor was empty, but Happy says it was full of heart. Iron Man is the bravest robot he has ever known. Roddy finds Pepper sleeping on the school steps, overworked from schoolwork, Team Iron Man research. A man bumps into her, but then the Hulk lands and chases after him. Soon the Hulk gets in a battle with AM, but they flee the scene after Iron Man arrives in bulky power armor. The Hulk escapes again and Iron Man locates Rick, but he puts a controller disc on Tony. The armor defenses attempt to toast the disc, but Tony is now controlled. Pepper and Rhodey find the incapacitated Rick, but as they get inside the building, the Hulk bursts out. Rick stops him, saying Pepper and Rhodey are friends now. Meanwhile, Iron Man arrives at a building top to meet the controller, who is trying to control the Hulk. However, he finds Iron Man to be a much more useful target in his goal to destroy AIM. He asks Company to remove his helmet to show his identity to him. Together, they arrive at a school to attempt to locate Tony and initiate the armor's lockdown procedures to prevent him from opening his helmet or saying anything. However, the controller stops Rhodey from interfering anymore after that. The controller orders Iron Man to attack AIM, and he does, smashing through goons and taking on MODOK. MODOK's mental blasts prove useless against the controller disc, and the controller arrives to gloat. Hulk and the gang show up and try to make Hulk break the controller disc on Iron Man's helmet. Eager to smash the annoying metal man, he prefers to do so by repeatedly smashing Iron Man's face into a wall, finally succeeding. In the chaos, the controller manages to regain control of Rick, who despite Pepper's protests, orders Hulk to bring the unconscious Iron Man over and rip off his helmet. Tony wakes up just in time and shoots the controller in order to release Rick. Rick then diffuses Hulk's anger towards Iron Man, and they finally take down the controller together. Rick and Hulk soon wish to leave the city, even if Pepper insists they can find rest there. She seems happy that despite her frustrations with Team Iron Man, Team Hulk would be way worse. Whitney is in class, nervous, hallucinating about her father, calling her useless. As Madame Mask, disguised as an agent, she attacks her father, threatening him and accusing him, but she is overpowered and he discovers her identity. She passes out, but the mask appears to have deteriorated her brain wave patterns. Therefore, Stain has no choice but to call for Tony to help reverse the damage. Whitney accuses Stain of Howard Stark's death, making Tony conflicted. He chooses to help Whitney, however, and travels to the Arctic as Iron Man to obtain samples from a special ore his father was using for these inventions. It was not stable at the time, making technology like the mask and the living laser's harness harmful to the users, but Tony has since managed to stabilize it and his heart is using that ore now. Stain defrosts the blizzard and sends him to acquire ore samples too and plants a bomb in his armor for leverage. Rhodey and Pepper suspect Stain is up to something, but while they worry, Whitney leaves her bed and grabs her mask and a weapon. Iron Man arrives at the abandoned Arctic base but is quickly overpowered by Blizzard, who demonstrates that he has outsmarted Stain already, removing the bomb by freezing it until it shatters. Blizzard has discovered the importance of the ore and destroys it to make it impossible to heal Whitney. As Madame Mask is causing chaos in Stark Tower, Blizzard returns to tell Stain what he has done. Soon Iron Man arrives and Stain is revealed to be Madame Mask. Afterwards, knocking down Blizzard and scanning him, she takes his form. The Blizzard and Iron Man battle until the real Stain arrives. Madame Mask moves to attack him, but he trash-talks her. Iron Man disables him with a sonic burst. Pepper and Rhodey rush in as Tony reveals his identity to the delirious Whitney, who woos to attack all the same. He knocks her out and decides that he will have to risk his life to save her with the ore from his heart implant. The process proves successful and Whitney wakes up in the hospital bed with Tony and Obadiah watching over her. It seems she has forgotten everything that has happened since she first donned the mask, but she also confides in Tony that she doesn't want to spy on him as her dad has asked her to. Team Iron Man and Jean are at the library, trying to figure out the directions to the next Makluan rings. Jean gets frustrated and leaves. Back home, Tong ninjas free Jean's stepdad after realizing they were following the wrong Mandarin. They take his 3 rings and go after Tony for the 4th ring. A flashback to 1,000 years ago shows the Mandarin building another temple. South American Incas watch him in awe. When he finishes, he hides the temple in rock, but one of the men carves the shape of the Mandarin's helmet into the rock as a clue for future explorers. Back in the present, Pepper tries to talk Tony out of finding more rings, saying it's too dangerous and only helps the Mandarin. Rhodey finds a clue at the library and calls Tony just as Tong ninjas attack them. They run to the armory but are captured by the Mandarin, who takes Tony's ring. The ninjas set fire to the storage buildings. Fire spreads into the armory, but the Iron Man armor is safe in its launch pod. In the helicopter, the captured Jean wakes up and reveals that the Mandarin is his stepfather, as Pepper suspected. He pretends to be surprised and on the verge of crying, but Pepper comforts him, saying he has friends. Tony is about to reveal his identity to Jean, but they arrive at their destination in Peru. Meanwhile, Rhodey enters the damaged armory, and after reviewing the surveillance tapes from the Tom attack, realizes what happened. In the hidden Inca city, the Mandarin uses the rings to move the rocks aside. However, he declares that he has no intention of taking the risk of the test himself. Holding Pepper hostage, he sends Tony and Jean to do the hard work. Inside the temple, they arrive at the test of sacrifice. There are 2 pedestals with hand-shaped indents that require 2 people to activate them. A large dragon statue inscribed with Fin Fang Foom stands before them. Roddy tries to get the Mark I armor, but the pod is stuck. The power cores of some other armor detonate and he flees. Pepper threatens the ninjas, saying the dragon will eat them all, but the Mandarin tells her to be quiet. Tony and Jean activate the 2 pedestals and the dragon comes to life. Rhodey finally dons the War Machine armor, busts out the Mark I armor, and escapes the launch bay with it in tow. He heads for Peru by a high orbit to save time. Back in the temple, the Tong ninjas flee the dragon and even the Mandarin is scared. He tries to drag Pepper along, but she wrestles the glove and all 4 rings from him by getting him stuck in a closing door mechanism. She runs for it, and Jean shouts for her to give him the rings. As Rhodey reaches escape velocity, his suit gives out. With life support failing, he is left floating, seemingly dead in space. Tony, Pepper, and Jean are in the Peruvian temple fighting Fin Fang Foom. As the dragon is after the rings, Pepper hopes that throwing the gauntlet into the dragon's mouth will distract it. She does so despite Jean's protests. Meanwhile, Rhodey, realizing his War Machine suit can't handle space travel due to the extreme cold, uses the space-capable Mark I armor to boost himself back down through the atmosphere, heating up from the friction. He succeeds and heads for the temple site, attacking the Tong helicopters and cutting off the Mandarin's escape from the shaking mountain. Tony, Jean, and Pepper run in panic from the rampaging Fin Fang Foom, trying to figure out what to sacrifice to pass the test. Tony runs to distract the dragon and save the others. Finally, War Machine arrives to their rescue, throwing Tony's backpack to him. Jean is surprised to see Rhodey as Iron Man, but Tony says that's what he was trying to tell him on the plane. Tony suits up and asks Rhodey to get Jean and Pepper out of there, but Fin Fang Foom kicks him down. Jean seems paralyzed by the idea of Tony being Iron Man, while Pepper tries to drag him to safety. Tony and Rhodey realize they are not getting anywhere with the fight. The dragon dies for Pepper and Jean sacrifices himself by pushing her out of the way. The dragon rams him through a door, creating a tunnel to the outside. Jean appears to be thrown into a dark room inside the dragon, where he finds the Mandarin's gauntlet and a block of ice containing the final ring. Realizing he has passed the test, he finally has all the rings and defeats the dragon from the inside, turning it to ice. The friends are relieved to see Jean walk unharmed out of the frozen dragon, but he transforms into Mandarin and attacks them. Smashing Roddy into a wall, he grapples with Tony and reveals that he was the one who attacked Tony and Howard's plane. A damaged Roddy attacks, but Mandarin moves on him despite Pepper begging him to stop. Tony grapples with him again. Despite his armor integrity failing, Tony proves stronger than the Mandarin's will. Jean finally distracts the Mandarin by claiming that he has his father hidden away and never killed him. The Mandarin escapes. Tony wakes up in his own bed with Rhodey having rescued them all. Tony knows that to get to his dad, he must go through Jean. Jean is seen back at the temple, torn between the emotional bonds with his new friends and his desire for his destiny. In frustration that even with all 5 rings, he still feels like nothing, he throws them to the ground. The rings reveal a map of 5 more rings. There are 10 rings in all. Season 2, Tony has been in China for weeks, searching for clues about Mandarin and his dad. Meanwhile, Rhodey, as War Machine, struggles to keep local crime in check, and they are still reeling from Jean's betrayal. Jean, meanwhile, climbs a snowy mountain with Howard, threatening him to help or never see Tony again, and Howard fears that bringing all the rings together could have disastrous consequences. Tony relocates his armory to the creepy Jersey Macluan Temple to avoid curious people. Pepper uses the armory's satellite links to watch TV and swoon over Justin Hammer, a new young millionaire in town. Later that week, Tony's friends find him unshaven and messy, working on a secret project for 2 days. Pepper jokes he looked terrible with a goatee, and they see Hammer on TV arriving at Stark International. Tony suits up to spy on him while Stain rejects Hammer's offer to buy Stark International. As Hammer leaves, he is attacked by Whiplash, who is hired to abduct him. However, Iron Man stops the attempt and Hammer tries to buy him off. Back at school, Happy and Whitney welcome Tony back. He is donated to the school, delighting his science teacher with a new miniature particle accelerator, though Tony hasn't explained how it works. Mr. Fix threatens Whiplash for failing, but sends him on a mission to get Stain. Iron Man and War Machine try to stop him, but Iron Man is defeated by Whiplash's exploding whips and is critically injured. Rhodey rushes him to the hospital with a damaged heart implant, needing Dr. Jensen's help. On the mountain, Howard senses something wrong with Tony, but Mandarin dismisses it. In the hospital, Rhodey and Pepper worry over Tony, who kicks the bucket on his birthday. Dr. Jensen arrives, reassures the Rhodes family and Pepper, and gets to work. At Mr. Fix's hideout, Stain tries to buy his freedom and suspects the client is Count Nefaria. In the hospital, Jensen jokes that Tony is dead, but then confirms he is pulling through and is strong. Meanwhile, Howard and Jean enter the Sixth Temple, guarded by the Melter. Greeted by his friends, Tony finally wakes up in the hospital and Justin Hammer shows up, making Pepper blush. Hammer makes a business proposition, but Tony refuses, not wanting to be in the weapons business. Though needing another week to recover, he persuades his friends to bust him out. Back at the armory, Tony reveals his improved McHugh armor with better life support. He shows new weapons like flares, missiles, sonic disruptors, and force fields. Pepper, excited, shows a sketch for her own armor. Tony reluctantly promises to consider it, and Pepper tries to think of a better name than Iron Woman. At the warehouse, Mr. Fix realizes the Iron Man armor chunks are more damaged than expected, but can still finish his microwave weapon. Stain tries to escape, but finds Blizzard eager to kill him. Iron Man and War Machine arrive to rescue Stain. They disable security and encounter Whiplash, and Mr. Fix shoots Tony with a microwave beam, while Blizzard freezes Rhodey. Tony recovers and thaws Rhodey, continuing the battle. The heroes win and free Stain, but drop him off on a roof instead of helping him home. Mr. Fix escapes and is picked up by his client, Justin Hammer, who injects him with a controlling nanovirus. In the mountains, Mandarin acquires the Sixth Ring. When Mr. Fix rematerializes the living laser on Justin Hammer's orders, unexpected complications split him into 2 separate halves. The dark half seeks out to destroy Iron Man and the world, while the light half tries to warn Tony and help him. After a fight with the dark half, Tony returns to the armory to find the light half, where he asks for his help. Tony denies this and gets angry at him. But when the dark half starts a rampage, Iron Man teams up with the light half to take the dark half down. Utilizing their combined strengths and strategies, Tony and the light half manage to subdue the dark half. Both halves of the living laser merge back into a single entity. This fusion restores the living laser to a state of total peace, no longer divided by conflicting impulses. Stain hires the Ghost to steal the Iron Man armor, so Ghost sets up a danger and makes a helicopter shut down. This alerts Iron Man to save the men in the helicopter and fly back to the armory. As Tony goes back to the armory, Ghost follows. Tony's identity is revealed to Ghost, and Ghost steals all of the armor specs. He sells them both to Obadiah Stane and Justin Hammer, and tells Tony he won't reveal his identity until he is 18 to blackmail him. Tony acknowledges that the theft of his armor specs and the Ghost blackmail signify the beginning of a new conflict. Sometime later, Tony is unable to comprehend the situation and he feels like it's the worst day in his life. He declares that this event has initiated a war in which he must fight to protect his technology and stop it from being used for evil purposes. When Obadiah Stane builds duplicates of the Iron Man armors, called the Guardsmen, consisting of Force and Shockwave, Tony Stark must reveal them as frauds. This, however, causes the public to turn against Tony, believing he is trying to discredit the new heroes. Obadiah Stane holds a press conference to assure the public that they can trust the Guardsmen and announces the Stark International Guardsman Expo, where he will reveal a new armor called Firepower. Pepper Potts uncovers the true identities of Force and Shockwave, revealing that they are actually criminals. On the day of the Stark International Guardsman Expo, people gather eagerly. Obadiah Stane takes the stage and introduces Force and Shockwave, followed by the unveiling of the newest armor, Firepower, equipped with the latest weapons. The crowd is initially impressed, but Pepper's discovery soon causes a havoc and Tony suits up and goes to the expo, pretending to surrender to Stane. He then exposes Force and Shockwave's true identities to everyone. Rhodey arrives as War Machine and helps Tony defeat Firepower. Force and Shockwave surrender, and Iron Man and War Machine are hailed as heroes. Obadiah lies, saying Force and Shockwave use fake identities to misuse the armor. He then meets with the scientists working on the Ironmonger project, giving them data to fix the armor's problems. The Black Panther is strategically attacking Hammer facilities to get Wakandan vibranium back. Meanwhile, friction occurs between Tony and Pepper as Tony goes on a date with Whitney. He, however, misses it as Iron Man bumps into a fight between the Panther and Black Knight. Yet, as Pepper spots the Black Panther entering Stark International, she knows Tony will have to act. Confronting the Panther inside, the two heroes agree to help each other in order to track down the one smuggling vibranium out of Wakanda, selling it to Stain and Hammer. They track her to a warehouse, but as they have to fight the Black Knight and armed men, the smuggler and Kia hides. The Black Panther sniffs her out and confronts her. Aboard the SHIELD helicarrier, Nick Fury explains they will keep Black Knight in their maximum security prison, the Vault, but they have no means of pinning anything on Hammer or Stain. Tony and T'Challa are frustrated, and T'Challa blames SHIELD for protecting their weapon sources. In school the next day, Tony brings Whitney flowers to make it up to her, but she kisses him and says they can start with lunch. Meanwhile, as Pepper and Happy decide to go out again, it is obvious that Tony and Pepper aren't quite getting along now. Tony breaks into Hammer Multinational to do some corporate sabotage and delete the stolen Iron Man data. He interrupts a business presentation Hammer was holding for SHIELD, and as guards fire on him, the effect from his stealth armor is broken and he must make a run for it. He narrowly escapes being hit with a rocket launcher. Hammer is upset, but he knows Iron Man will be back to delete the remaining data, so he expects to be ready for him then and use it as an opportunity to field test his project. The next day, the friends are hanging out on the roof, and while Tony contemplates his next attack, he receives a dinner invitation from Justin Hammer saying, "I know your secret." Tony fears the said secret is his Iron Man identity. At Hammer's place, he shows Tony his expensive art collection and treats him to unappetizing food. Hammer believes Tony is working for Stark International to bring him down, but Tony denies it. Tony jokingly offers to give Hammer Stark International when he turns 18 if he removes the gross snails. Back in the armory, Pepper announces another date with Happy, which annoys Tony further. Tony sneaks into Hammer's place again and plants programs to delete data. He discovers the Titanium Man project but is ambushed by it. Titanium Man overpowers Tony's stealth armor, but Rose arrives just in time. Titanium Man, controlled by Justin Hammer, fires a power-siphoning beam at War Machine. Tony breaks free, kicks Hammer down, and escapes with the incapacitated War Machine. Happy talks excitedly as he and Pepper leave a movie theater. Tony calls Pepper to remote pilot the Make-Hyo to his location as his power is failing and Hammer is still chasing them, so she excuses herself to Happy. Hammer catches up to Iron Man and grabs him in the air. After struggling, Iron Man and War Machine land on a dock. Tony quickly uses his remaining power to start War Machine's backup generator, then ejects from his armor and seeks cover. Hammer arrives, damaging the stealth armor and launching missiles at Tony. War Machine fights back. Eventually, the Make-Hyo armor arrives and Tony re-enters the battle, resisting Hammer's attacks. They unleash powerful repulsor blasts, setting Hammer's suit on fire. Enraged, Hammer retreats to his lab, ejects and blames Mr. Fix for the failure. Despite Fix's warnings, Hammer triggers a nanovirus killing Fix. However, Fix's consciousness is transferred into Hammer's computer, forcing him into perpetual labor. Tony upgrades the stealth armor to Make-Hyo capacity, ensuring it's stronger than ever. Doom makes a deal with Stain. Stain provides Iron Man armor specs and Doom aids with the Monger project. Upon seeing the data, Doom finds the Iron Man armor inferior. Whitney worries about her father's reaction to the diplomatic visit, which Tony has already uncovered by snooping on Stain's transmissions. Rhodey warns dealing with Doom will be difficult due to his diplomatic status. Stain shows Doom his Monger core. Doom offers to replace its unstable nuclear source with his quantum designs, reducing its size and increasing output. Doom suspects Iron Man's tampering and detects his approach. Doom attacks, overwhelming Tony's armor. Rhodey suits up but is easily defeated. Remote controlling the armor, Pepper knocks Doom out and they escape. Tony remains unconscious, his mind trapped in a dark void. Memories of Rhodey and Pepper help him wake up after 3 hours. During his time, Doom has miniaturized the Monger core, but it remains unstable. Tony plants bugs to spy on the project. Doom disables one. Tony analyzes Doom's advanced armor, discovering a 1.7-second recovery window after an attack. He realizes Doom is turning the power core into a bomb powerful enough to destroy the eastern seaboard. Tony arrives to defuse it but can only contain the blast with a force field, getting injured in the process. Doom leaves on his plane, discovering his bomb failed. War Machine attacks the plane and Iron Man joins the battle. Doom tries to incapacitate Iron Man with a demonic grip, but War Machine intervenes. S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives, taking Doom back to Latveria due to his diplomatic immunity. Fury advises Tony to keep his friends close and his enemies closer. Tony apologizes to Whitney for missing their date, not revealing he is Iron Man. She breaks up with him, but they stay friends. In the armory, Tony discovers Doom's power sources are similar to the Makluan rings. Meanwhile, Howard and Jean move through the 7th temple, encountering the Centurion guarding the 7th ring. Using a synthesized Whitney voice, Pepper lures Obadiah Stane out of his office. Iron Man enters to steal a user interface chip from the safe, but is quickly snatched from him by Hawkeye. He gives chase, but Black Widow arrives and shocks his armor, neutralizing him. He watches helplessly as Hawkeye and Black Widow make off with his prize. At their hideout, Clint and Natasha talk. They are working for Count Nefaria, but this last job can buy them out of that and get them a vacation. Natasha doesn't want to stop working and wants to be a spy again, not just a petty thief. Their flat is attacked by Titanium Man, who tracks them via satellite to grab Stark Tech. He overpowers them. Pepper finds intel on Natasha and Hawkeye's brother's debt to Nefaria, feeling jealous of Natasha's spy training. Iron Man tracks the chip's frequency to find the thieves, but rescues them from the rubble left by Titanium Man. Natasha attacks him, planting a motion-sensitive bomb on his chest. Hawkeye is doubtful but runs off with her. Tony disables the bomb and decides to use the Make It Hue for the next fight. Justin Hammer arrives at his lab, chip in hand, satisfied with his new titanium vibranium armor made by Fix 2.0. Fix warns that the chip needs calibration. Security detects Hawkeye and Black Widow in the building, and they fall into a grinder trap. Hammer treats it as a game, unnerving his staff. Natasha and Clint use their acrobatics and teamwork to fight back, suspended above the grinders. Iron Man enters, and Hammer is excited to try his new security on him. Iron Man becomes trapped in a laser grid. Hammer laughs manically at Iron Man and the thieves. Iron Man escapes using a sonic attack to shatter the laser-focused crystals and busts through a wall to find Natasha and Clint. They break out and enter Hammer's empty office. Tony destroys some stolen armor data, but Hammer attacks with a remote MODOK drone controlled with a VR helmet and gamepad. MODOK can read Natasha's memories and tries to set the thieves against each other. Hawkeye shoots him down and uses the user interface chip to short out MODOK. Hammer rages and calls security. Natasha runs off, and Iron Man and Clint escape. Clint decides to do good and heads west after shaking hands with Iron Man. In a trading simulation overseen by Stane, an autopiloted Crimson Dynamo smashes Iron Man holograms. Project Monger quickly tears Dynamo to pieces. In school, Tony freaks out after being teased and gets sent to the principal's office. Despite the demonstration, Stark International's board wants something more Stark Tech from Stane. Stane picks up Tony and unsuccessfully tries to recruit him for Project Monger. Tony sneaks into the lab but is stopped by security. He reluctantly joins Stane's project, humiliating him at every opportunity. The board approves Project Monger to aid in leveling Old Jersey labs. Tony and Stane watch Project Monger, a gigantic mech piloted by O'Brien, head to Jersey from a helicopter. Rhodey, watching from the armory, breaks out War Machine to investigate. Tony reminds Stane that using weapons for construction is overkill. A signal jammer prevents them from stopping O'Brien as a civilian is in the demolition zone. Tony suits up as Iron Man to rescue the man, dodging Monger's rockets. War Machine arrives to help. Stane is content, hoping a demolition accident will rid him of Tony. Ironmonger uses shockwave attacks, shaking the neighborhood. Tony rescues the old man, Professor Zimmer, an old Stark employee. War Machine stalls Ironmonger. O'Brien, seeing the civilians, stands down and returns to base. Stane fires him. At the hospital, Tony fears Stane will ruin the company and confronts him. Stane leaves, giving Tony a chance to steal his files. Rhodey alerts that Zimmer has run back to Jersey, and Tony sees Ironmonger piloted by Stane heading there too. Pepper finds a weak point in Ironmonger. Tony pep talks Zimmer. They disable Ironmonger by firing uni beams at its right leg. Stane and Zimmer settle, allowing Zimmer to keep his lab if he doesn't press charges. In the 7th Makluan Temple, Howard Stark scribbles SOS notes. Jean returns with the 7th ring, calling him foolish for thinking anyone can rescue him. At the new armory, Pepper snoots on secure shield radio frequencies and intercepts distress signals from the helicarrier. Tony investigates and spots Black Widow emerging from the helicarrier, knocking her out of the sky and chasing her over rooftops. She escapes as Maria Hill and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents stop Iron Man. Fury, suspicious of Iron Man's quick arrival, explains they are purchasing vibranium for a vibranium adamantium project and reluctantly admits they may need Iron Man's help. Tony isn't thrilled. His scanners pick up stolen Stark armor tech on the helicarrier, and he discovers shield battle armors based on his designs. Black Widow, working for Hammer, detects something off the Hammer building and Ghost attacks there, neutralizing guards and enraging Justin Hammer. Black Widow and Hammer, codenamed High Roller, decide to wait until morning for the rendezvous. On the helicarrier, Fury informs Tony that S.H.I.E.L.D. legally bought the Iron Man drones from Hammer. Enraged, Tony leaves, deciding to let S.H.I.E.L.D. recover their alloy themselves. Hill informs Fury that Iron Man has vibranium-adamantium alloy signatures, leading Fury to sick the mandroids on him. Tony disables them quickly and discovers Black Widow sprayed him with the alloy signatures, making him a fugitive. Refusing to help S.H.I.E.L.D., Tony decides to lay low. His confidence plagues him and he takes to the sky with Rhodey against the repaired mandroids. After the fight, Tony uses stealth armor to track the chemical signature back to Widow. Natasha arrives at Hammer's floating castle island, impressed. Iron Man and Ghost arrive, leading to a four-way fight for the alloy sample. Hammer escapes and Ghost exploits Iron Man's chivalry, forcing him to save Natasha instead of pursuing Ghost, who escapes with the prize and takes it to Stain. Iron Man argues with Fury again, clearing his name but costing S.H.I.E.L.D. a lot of destroyed mandroids. Impressed with Natasha, Fury offers her a job in her cell. A tired Tony dozes off in his armor while patrolling the city at 4 a.m. He intercepts police chasing Magia goons in a van, disabling them as the sun rises. Late for school, he almost falls asleep in class. Suddenly, a gas knocks everyone out. Tony wakes in the theater, facing Rona and Andrew Irwin on screen. Rona threatens him, demanding answers to 5 questions or Pepper gets hurt. Tony correctly answers, saving Pepper, but Rona traps his friends. Tony solves puzzles to save them, finally facing a bomb threat. Unable to answer Rona's impossible question, Tony defuses the bomb, saving everyone. As Rona sends Andrew to stop the escaping friends, Tony equips his Make-He-You Iron Man suit. Andrew proves formidable, throwing Roddy and Happy aside. Iron Man battles him, discovering he's an android. Meanwhile, the friends face Rona wielding a shrink ray. They overpower her, but Iron Man tries to reason with Andrew, who believes he's human. Iron Man exposes Andrew's wires in battle, and he collapses. Rona, devastated, blames the friends for her brother's death. The police arrive, revealing Rona's troubled past. Tony offers to help Rona, but she refuses angrily. She's taken away, and a mysterious woman with red eyes appears, hinting at further trouble. Iron Man confronts Stain, showcasing the Ironmonger, upgraded with adamantium vibranium armor as a weapon to General Ross, but Stain remains unrepentant. Tony decides to destroy all his armor and specs to prevent further harm, quitting as Iron Man. Roddy tries to reason with him, but Tony is determined. Meanwhile, Hammer's frustrations boil over as he nearly shoots Sasha, narrowly missing her. Roddy discovers valuable secrets among the Ironmonger data they stole, giving Tony a plan to strike back. However, Stain's position as CEO is solidified by Stark International's board until Tony exposes his dealings with the Ghost. Stain is fired, and although he starts to piece together Iron Man's identity, Tony is resolute in his decision to step away from the armor. Stain's downfall doesn't break him, as his daughter encourages him to bounce back. Meanwhile, Tony celebrates his decision to quit as Iron Man by taking his armor for a spin. However, Stain plots revenge in the Ironmonger lab. Tony's friends are unhappy with his decision, and Ruddy learns he'll lose War Machine too, prompting him to leave. Pepper follows him, leaving their station at the armory unmanned. Tony encounters Titanium Man, who proposes a deal to destroy Ironmonger and Stark International, but Tony refuses. Hammer attacks Tony, but upon learning that Stain is in the Ironmonger lab, Tony rushes to confront him first. In the lab, Stain launches mechs, planning his next move. Tony, low on power, heads for the armory but spots Ironmonger heading towards the Rhodes family home where Pepper is. Ironmonger kidnaps Pepper, knowing Tony's secret identity. Tony valiantly tries to rescue her but is overpowered. Stain climbs Stark Tower with Pepper, prompting Tony and War Machine to intervene. Stain reveals he knows Tony's identity, and a distressed Whitney tries to reason with him to spare her father. Hammer's disappointment leads him to let Sasha take control and send Ironmonger on a destructive rampage. Tony quickly realizes Hammer's intentions and confronts him, while War Machine tries to help Stain escape from the rampaging armor. Ironmonger moves towards Whitney, but crashes to the ground, gravely injuring Stain. Tony and Rhodey then focus on subduing Titanium Man, knocking him far away. Despite Hammer's desperate attempts to regain control, Sasha disables communications with him. Meanwhile, a bitter Whitney watches as Iron Man rescues Stain from the damaged mech. Blaming Tony for driving her father to desperate actions, she vows that he will regret his decisions. As War Machine approaches the temple in the Egyptian desert, Tony starts to shake off the Mandarin's hypnotic hold. Inside, Jean helps Tony escape a trap, showing that the spell's grip is weakening. They face the temple's puzzle, where Tony must confront his painful past to get the ring. Tony endures the agony and retrieves the ring, finally breaking free from the mind control. He rejoins the battle against the Mandarin. Meanwhile, War Machine arrives to lend a hand. The fight between Iron Man and Mandarin grows intense, and the Grim Reaper statue comes to life, attacking them both. Despite the assault, they stand firm and the ring reappears in the statue's mouth. As the dust storm envelops the temple, Rhodey updates the team outside about the worsening conditions. Inside Tony's mind, he revisits the traumatic plane attack, confronting his father once again. In Jean's mind, he faces his stepfather and Tong ninjas who transform into Mandarin wielding all the Makluan rings. Tony faces a nightmare scenario in board meeting where Stain exploits the armor technology, leading to his termination and a brutal fight with goons resembling War Machine. With Pepper's encouragement, Tony finds the strength to overcome the nightmare. War Machine breaks through the storm and they defeat the Temple Guardian. Pepper tries to escape with the ring, but Mandarin intervenes, claiming the ring's powers for himself. Despite Pepper's pleas, Mandarin asserts his righteousness and uses the ring to control wind and speed. He stops the storm and vanishes, leaving the friends behind. At the Tong hideout, Mandarin confronts Howard Stark, vowing to keep him captive until Jean collects all the rings. Blizzard's attempt to steal a big diamond is foiled by Iron Man. But Tony's mood sours upon hearing that Hammer has taken over Stark International. Not even Robert's French toast can cheer him up. Sasha adds to Tony's woes by presenting legal documents canceling his inheritance and trust fund. With limited resources for repairs and new armor, Tony and his friends decide to expose Justin Hammer's illegal activities. Hammer and Sasha lure Iron Man into investigating a shipment, leading him into a trap with Whiplash and Killer Shrike. Titanium Man joins in, overwhelming Iron Man. Tony activates lockdown mode for protection, thwarting the villains' plans. Rhodey and Pepper arrive too late, prompting them to hunt down the villains. In Hammer's lab, Fix 2.0 tries to extract the pilot from Iron Man to reveal the armor's secrets. Unicorn, Killer Shrike, and Whiplash oversee the operation, tensions running high among them. Tony's armor unexpectedly boots back online, surprising Hammer and Fix as they find a person inside. Despite their efforts to remove the armor, Tony's helmet protects him and War Machine falls into a cosmic ray trap. War Machine breaks free and battles the villains, while Pepper uses the stealth armor to recharge Tony's failing heart. Together, they turn the tide of the fight, but Titanium Man shows up and destroys Pepper's stealth armor. They use cosmic ray guns against Titanium Man, causing him to collapse. Iron Man wants to finish him off in his anger, but Rhodey stops him, suggesting they take down Hammer the right way instead. Tony decides to start his own company, promising to build Pepper her own armor with the money they'll earn. They agree on naming the company Stark Solutions, marking a new beginning for Tony and his friends. A man named Malin steals his serum, injecting himself with it and transforming into a superpowered being. He rampages through the streets, attacking S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and attracting the attention of Iron Man. In the midst of the chaos, Tony Stark is critically injured during a confrontation with Malin, prompting S.H.I.E.L.D. to rush him to safety aboard the helicarrier. Malin's rage intensifies as he hallucinates, blaming Fury for his perceived failures. As Tony's friends and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents work to stabilize him, Malin's rampage continues, leaving destruction in its wake. Despite S.H.I.E.L.D.'s efforts to contain him, Malin proves to be a formidable adversary, overpowering even Black Widow and the S.H.I.E.L.D. backup. Meanwhile, Pepper and the others witness the devastation caused by Malin's attack, realizing the gravity of the situation. Tony's condition remains precarious, his heart implant damaged beyond repair. Fury reaches out to Tony's friends through the armor comlink, prompting Rhodey to remotely open the armor for medical aid. Tony regains consciousness on the helicarrier, surprised that Fury knows his identity, but S.H.I.E.L.D. agents assure him of their confidentiality. However, Tony's injuries are severe, rendering him unfit to continue as Iron Man due to his damaged heart. Meanwhile, Malin, consumed by rage and hallucinations, plans his next move. Tony queries Fury and Hill about the serum Malin used, discovering Extremis, an experimental substance boosting biological functions. Fury informs him they've recovered Captain America and may need Tony's assistance to revive him. Tony proposes injecting himself with a low dose of Extremis to heal and confront Malin. Despite Fury's doubts, Tony insists on the plan. As Malin launches another assault, Tony flees to the Extremis lab to self-administer the serum. He adjusts the dosage to integrate the suit directly with his brain, enhancing his capabilities. Rhodey, Hill, and Pepper hurry into the lab and witness Tony emerging from a cocoon, completely healed and with his heart regrown. Maria Hill voices concern over Tony's risky decisions, worrying he might have turned into another threat like Malin. Meanwhile, Fury and Black Widow struggle to capture Malin, who easily overpowers them despite Fury's regret over using Hammer's tech. On the helicarrier, doctors try to evaluate Tony's condition, but he surprises them by demonstrating control over technology, summoning his suit to assemble around him seamlessly. With his newfound abilities, Tony confronts Malin in battle, finally able to match his speed and strength. Using a satellite uplink, Tony gains a tactical edge and incapacitates Malin by electrocuting him with a power cable. Iron Man offers to help S.H.I.E.L.D. bolster their security measures, acknowledging their weaknesses. Nick Fury hints at recruiting Tony for a team he's forming once he reaches 18. While exploring a deserted parking structure, Tony Stark senses unusual magnetic disturbances throughout the city and discovers Simon Trask, unconscious and trapped beneath an I-beam. Suddenly, Magneto appears and effortlessly hurls Tony out of the building using his magnetic powers. Trask, an advocate for mutant registration, triggers a debate among Tony's friends. Pepper supports registration, but Rhodey opposes it. Meanwhile, at school, Annie Claremont, a new student, faces bullying but reveals her telekinetic and telepathic abilities to Tony and Rhodey during dinner. Annie is fleeing from Magneto, who seeks to exploit her powers for his own agenda. Magneto ambushes and abducts Annie, intending to manipulate her into assassinating Senator Kelly, who advocates for mutant registration. In his hideout, Magneto reflects on his troubled past and plans to have Annie simulate a heart attack to target the senator. Despite Pepper's advice to avoid mutant affairs, Tony resolves to upgrade his suit's magnetic repulsor shields to counter Magneto. Tracking Magneto's location, Iron Man and War Machine brace themselves against an attack, while Annie reaches out to them telepathically for rescue. During the senator's speech, Magneto compels Annie to target his heart, but she refuses, cherishing all life. Iron Man and War Machine intervene, with Iron Man's upgraded shields fending off Magneto's assaults. Annie rescues the senator from collapsing debris, but War Machine struggles against Magneto's powers. As Iron Man battles, Annie suggests removing Magneto's helmet to attack his mind. Rhodey manages to do so, enabling Annie to immobilize Magneto. Despite Senator Kelly's attempt to shift blame onto her, the crowd sees Annie as a hero. Back at school, Annie reveals her true identity as Jean Grey, and Professor Charles Xavier arrives to bring her to his school for mutants. Hoping for a tech-free day, Pepper takes Tony shoe shopping. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appears in the sky over New York, asking for Iron Man. The figure, Andrew Stark, reveals he is Tony's time-traveling grandson. Skeptical, Tony calls for his armor, but Andrews teleports them away, explaining that Tony will invent teleportation and time-traveling armor, but will also create an ad called Vortex, which will destroy the world. Despite Tony's vow to never create Vortex, Andrews intends to eliminate him to prevent this future. Tony manages to escape when the police arrive, granting him a brief reprieve. At Hammer Tower, Justin and Sasha witness the news of the battle, and Andros seeks Justin's aid against Iron Man. Andros discloses that in 2099, Justin is a hero and 3-term president. Justin provides Andros with worthless Iron Man armor specifications, hoping to sabotage his plans. Meanwhile, Tony devises intricate nanovirus chips to exploit a weakness in Andros' extremist system and seeks assistance from Hawkeye. Unable to locate Iron Man, Andros sets his sights on S.H.I.E.L.D., causing significant damage to the helicarrier. Iron Man and Hawkeye have arrived to confront Andros, but their attacks prove ineffective against him. Hawkeye suggests targeting Andros' joints, but Andros injures both him and Black Widow, sparking Tony's fury. Andros seemingly obliterates Tony, but Hawkeye manages to strike Andros' elbow with a nanovirus arrow, deactivating him. Realizing the danger posed by the nanovirus, Andros travels back in time to warn Tony just before his demise. Tony destroys the arrow, preventing the creation of Vortex. With Andros' future influence erased, he vanishes. Meanwhile, at Hammer Tower, the future news article depicting Justin as a celebrated president transforms into one portraying him as a disgraced old man in prison, much to Sasha's amusement. Iron Man finds himself in a deserted Makluan temple with his armory and friends missing. At the Rhodes residence, a retired man now lives there. At school, Whitney and Happy have no knowledge of Rhodey or Pepper. Tony suspects Mandarin or Dr. Doom have altered reality. He recalls being ambushed with War Machine during a weapons bust between AIM and Hammer, but his memory is spotty and his armor has no recordings. Seeking answers, he confronts Justin Hammer, but instead finds Basil Sandhurst, the controller, at Stark's CEO office. The controller claims he now controls the world and demonstrates his power by effortlessly defeating Iron Man. He probes Tony's mind, seeking information about his extremist upgrade. During the battle, a car turns into a wireframe and disappears, revealing the reality to be a virtual one. The controller explains that with Extremis, he can expand his virtual reality and control everyone's minds. Despite the controller's threats, Tony hacks into the mainframe, almost losing himself in the process. The controller tries to deceive him with illusions of Pepper and Rhodey in danger, but Tony sees through them and continues his hack until the virtual reality breaks down. They wake up at an AIM base and Iron Man breaks free to attack the controller. The controller then commands a mind control war machine to attack Iron Man. Rhodey fights the control, causing a feedback surge that disables the controller. Basil, now with apparent amnesia, is left behind as they return to the armory. Pepper is relieved but worried, revealing they've been missing for 3 days. Tony remains unsure of reality as the armory glitches for a moment as they leave. Iron Man activates his satellite to detect McLuhan Ring energies. Meanwhile, Jean and Howard Stark approach the 9th McLuhan Ring Temple in Latveria, only to find the Guardian, Grey Gargoyle, shattered and the ring stolen by Dr. Doom. In New York, Pepper testing an armor accidentally hits a helicopter, but War Machine rescues it. Tony calls Pepper back to base as the sky turns dark red, with a portal spitting meteors over the city. Tony insists it's just the weather, but Mandarin teleports and only to collapse. He awakens to demand his rings back, proving with a recording that Howard is alive and a hostage. Reluctantly, Tony gives him the teleportation ring to cooperate against Doom. They teleport to Castle Doom and fall into a trap but escape by working together. In New York, Roddy and Pepper fend off meteors and blue light balls from the portal. Iron Man confronts Doom, who attacks. Returning one ring, Iron Man and Mandarin defeat a Doombot. They find Howard in a light cage but are captured by the real Doom. Doom opens a portal to another reality to trade their souls with the demon Yog-Thulu for his family's return. In Yog-Thulu's dimension, they search for an escape as the demon argues with Doom over Jean's impure soul. Reluctantly, Iron Man gives Mandarin the rings and they teleport back to face an enraged Doom. Howard disables Doom with an electric surge, and Mandarin seizes the 9th ring, inserting it into the device. Iron Man activates it, trapping Doom in the cage where Yog-Thulu grabs him. Mandarin closes the dangerous portals and the skies normalize. The Mandarin asks Iron Man if he's still convinced of his evilness before teleporting away. Howard returns home and the family is together. Instead of being bitter over Jean's actions, Howard wishes to celebrate being with his family and plans to reclaim the Stark business. While pulling an all-nighter, Iron Man battles a terrified Black Knight who ultimately escapes after knocking Iron Man into a truck. With Whiplash and Blizzard already taken down, Tony and his friends speculate about a vigilant or competitor targeting them. Stark International workers survey the ruins hiding the armory, fearing Justin Hammer's plans to use the site for weapons testing. Tony urges Howard to prevent Hammer from driving Stark International into the weapons trade. At Hammer Tower, Justin Hammer and his team discuss Stark's return. Hammer, believing Count Nefaria is blackmailing him, plans to use Nefaria to test a new weapon, Z-Gas. Sasha fears it could cause a zombie apocalypse. The real blackmailer demands $1 billion, and Hammer, donning the Titanium Man armor, threatens Fix to trace the source before taking off. Iron Man arrives at Hammer Tower but follows Titanium Man after spotting him. Meanwhile, the Unicorn and Killer Shrike plan their escape, fearing they'll be targeted next. Titanium Man crashes their hideout, accusing them of blackmail. Killer Shrike takes hostages, forcing Iron Man to act. Iron Man deflects Shrike's attacks and captures him, bringing him back to the warehouse where Unicorn lies barely alive after Titanium Man's rampage. Shrike begs Iron Man to take him to jail for safety. At Stark International, Roberta and Howard discuss legalities while Tony and Rhodey suggest using Hammer's tactics. Howard condemns this, calling Iron Man an amateur for his destructive methods. Hammer fears Shrike will reveal their crimes to lawyer Matt Murdock for a reduced sentence. Sasha laughs until Hammer suggests using Z-Gas in the city. Pepper learns Shrike's transfer route, and War Machine and Iron Man prepare to protect him. Titanium Man attacks again, kidnapping Shrike for interrogation, but he knows nothing. The heroes intercept a transmission revealing Fix's involvement. Hammer accuses Sasha of blackmail. The heroes stop Hammer from executing Shrike. Hammer zombifies Shrike with Z-Gas. Shrike attacks Sasha but is easily fended off by her and Iron Man. Iron Man reveals he has broadcast Hammer's criminal admissions live thanks to Fix, who admits to blackmailing Hammer for revenge. Desperate, Hammer dons the Titanium Man armor, triggering a zombie gas bomb over the city. Tony ignites the gas with a bomb, rendering it harmless. He then assists War Machine in disabling Titanium Man's armor and capturing Hammer. They drop Hammer back at Hammer Tower, where Fix traps him in a gas chamber, zombifying him. Iron Man kills Fix too late to save Hammer from becoming a brain-hungry weakling. They call S.H.I.E.L.D. to investigate reversing the zombie effect. Control of Stark International returns to Howard Stark, who publicly thanks Iron Man for inspiring perseverance. Tony takes out a couple of AIM goons and then rushes to a meeting with his father, only to be late again. Howard reminds him about the importance of responsibility with their power. As they walk together, they encounter Bruce Banner, who is thought to be missing. Bruce, on the run from the police, almost hulks out in front of the Starks. They take him to a diner where Bruce explains some facts about the Hulk while helping himself to a big lunch. Bruce and Howard had both worked on the Gamma Energy project but opted out when it was weaponized. Bruce had attempted to recover his research, running into Rick Jones in the blast zone, and was irradiated after saving Rick from the explosion. Bruce believes Howard's Fallout siphon device can remove the radiation from him. They set up the experiment at an outdoor lab, but S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives to capture Banner, attacking the area. Despite the Starks' presence, General Ross takes command and orders a full attack. Angered by the shots, Banner transforms into the Hulk, knocking Howard out and attacking the helicarrier. Tony suits up as Iron Man and tries to calm him down but gets smashed. Maria Hill joins the battle. Iron Man calls for a ceasefire, but Ross, taking the Hulk issue personally, sees him as interfering. As attacking the Hulk only makes him stronger, they finally pacify him with sleep gas. Banner is captured and Ross is proud of his aggressive tactics, but Fury criticizes him for damaging S.H.I.E.L.D. equipment and endangering civilians and the crew. When Iron Man and Howard intervene, Hill almost spills the beans about Tony's identity. S.H.I.E.L.D. is now under U.S. military command, and Ross is involved in the pursuit of Banner. Ross isn't interested in curing Banner. He aims to create more Hulks for his control and imprisons the Starks for interfering. Pepper, monitoring the helicarrier from the armory, discovers other sources of gamma radiation besides Banner. She taps into a security camera and sees Ross's plan to kill Banner. Informing Howard, she begins hacking the S.H.I.E.L.D. mainframe to free Banner. Ross's actions cause Banner to Hulk out again. Tony summons his Hulkbuster armor and War Machine follows. Hulk cripples the helicarrier, and Tony, in his Hulkbuster suit, helps War Machine keep the helicarrier upright long enough to restart an engine and prevent it from crashing into the city. Ross deploys tanks to the streets, giving Hulk more things to throw at the heroes. War Machine is knocked out and Hulk rips the arms off Tony's Hulkbuster suit. Ross then deploys Mandroids, whose combined beam weapons knock the Hulk out. Ross must deploy the Fallout siphon himself as the helicarrier staff remains loyal to Fury. Iron Man tries to stop the siphon, but it overloads, forcing Ross to flee. Hulk, realizing Iron Man is helping him, tosses him out of the ensuing gamma explosion. Iron Man, War Machine, Fury, Hill, Howard, and Ross return to the smoking crater to find a Grey Hulk. The Grey Hulk tells Ross that while he would love to squash him, Ross isn't worth his time. He calmly walks over to the heroes and then leaps off to find a peaceful place. Howard eyes Iron Man and suggests he better check on how his son and his friend are doing. Tony and Howard visit Obadiah Stane at the hospital, only to find his bed empty. Meanwhile, Stane is in a dark flat, plotting his revenge on Tony, saying he remembers everything. Tony tries contacting Whitney about her father's disappearance, but she is off the grid. He warns Howard to be cautious, but Howard dismisses the threat, believing they have nothing to fear from Stane. War Machine keeps an eye out for Howard. The group discusses whether to reveal their secret identities to Howard. Iron Man checks on the facility where the Ironmonger is kept and confirms it is secure. During Howard's public announcement of the Stark pod, an explosion occurs, causing debris to fall on the spectators. War Machine and Iron Man quickly rescue them. Howard gets to safety at Stark Industries and orders O'Brien to destroy the weapons Stane built. O'Brien betrays him, injecting him with a neurotoxin that may kill him within 6 hours. Iron Man finds Howard too late and goes on the hunt for an antidote. Stane calls, demanding Tony come alone or risk losing his father. The friends are frustrated they can't help, especially Pepper, who wishes she had her own armor. They find Whitney at school, but she denies knowing her father's whereabouts and is angry at being suspected. Tony arrives at a dark warehouse and finds the antidote, but is attacked by DNA-targeted drones. Summoning his armor, he secures the antidote. At school, Pepper and Rhodey are also attacked by drones. Rhodey disables one with an electromagnet from the physics lab, and Pepper takes another out with a baseball bat. Iron Man races to defeat the drones and deliver the antidote to Howard. At the armory, Pepper turns on Rhodey and stuns him. The real Pepper arrives, shocked to see Stane standing over Rhodey's body. Stane traps Pepper and Rhodey, setting a bomb with a 1-minute timer. Iron Man is forced to fight Ironmonger. Rhodey and Pepper free themselves with a blowtorch and attempt to defuse the bomb. Instead, they put the bomb in an empty armor and eject it, so it detonates at a safe distance. Iron Man disables the monger with Extremis. Stane steps out, rapidly transforming into various people, and finally reveals herself as Whitney Stane, also known as Madame Mask. Whitney shocks Tony and takes the antidote, explaining her father is still in a coma, and she blames Iron Man for his condition. She threatens to break the antidote vial, tossing it in the air before escaping. Tony catches the antidote and saves Howard. Tony tracks Whitney's energy signature to a rich apartment, where he finds Obadiah and Whitney. He tells her the mask's unstable energies are driving her over the edge. She threatens to reveal his secret identity, but two S.H.I.E.L.D. agents step in to arrest her, revealing they already know. However, on the helicarrier, Whitney escapes by impersonating Agent Brand. Jean has a flashback to his childhood, where his dreams were visions of dragons and magical rings. His mother tells him his dreams are prophecies about his destiny. At the armory, Rhodey and Tony surprise a blindfolded Pepper with her own new armor. Excited, Pepper takes it for a spin before they can give her proper instructions. The guys chase after her to prevent any harm to the city as she haphazardly fires weapons into the air. Meanwhile, Tony's satellite detects McLuhan energy signatures flaring up in China. The gang lies to their respective parents to be away for a while. Howard suspects Tony is hiding something, but Tony feels the same about him, noticing that the blueprints Howard is working on look suspiciously like a weapon. After Tony storms off, Howard's staff informs him about an odd Stark Tech satellite they have no record of launching, Tony's McLuhan energy scanner. In China, Jean travels through the bamboo forests of his childhood, summoning the final temple. Team Iron Man heads toward China. Tony, still angry, flies ahead but must dodge incoming missiles. Rhodey suggests he make plans instead of letting his emotions get the best of him. Using Extremis, Tony creates false targets for the fighters, and they quickly make their way to the temple. Inside, Jean is trapped in a labyrinth, frustrated without Howard Stark's knowledge. Hearing boot jets, he attacks the heroes but is momentarily distracted by Pepper's new armor. They knock him through a wall into the ring's chamber. As he tries to pick it up, a large sphere activates and a six-eyed reptilian man steps out. The reptilian guardian explains to Jean that he has the dragon seed within him, making him part McLuhan. He tells of the McLuhan overlord, who used the rings for tyranny until he escaped to Earth, giving the dragon seed to a brave man, the noble Khan. This altered Khan's DNA, allowing him and his descendants to use the rings. The original Mandarin hid the rings, fearing his children would use them for ill. Jean believes himself worthy, but the Guardian sees much darkness in him. They battle, and Mandarin uses the ninth ring's sandstorm powers to surprise the Guardian. Jean speaks about his birthright and his desire to bring order to the world. Team Iron Man intervenes, shooting Jean with everything they have and knocking him out. The Guardian, surprised by their help, looks inside their minds and finds Pepper far more worthy than Jean. Mandarin recovers, zapping War Machine and Iron Man. Pepper goes into stealth, but is soon overpowered by Jean. He unleashes more ring powers and defeats the Guardian, who dissolves as Jean takes the ring. Power courses through Jean, making him feel omnipotent. His first goal is to annihilate Iron Man, but he is shot in the back by Howard. Howard reveals he recognized the armor design as Tony's from the beginning. The weapon he was designing was an energy suppressor specifically to inhibit the McLuhan ring's powers. However, Jean struggles to his feet and alters reality to delete the suppressor. Howard taunts Jean, urging him to prove he can be a good guy. Jean takes off. Howard turns towards the heroes, somewhat hinting he was bluffing about knowing Iron Man's identity. Pepper decides to call herself Rescue from now on. Safe for the moment, they fear what Jean will do next. With all 10 rings, he might be the most powerful being in the universe. Tony, preoccupied with his ongoing struggle against Mandarin, forgets his own birthday while giving his father a tour of the armory. The Mandarin announces his plan for world domination under the guise of peace, leading Tony to blame himself for the situation. Howard suggests disabling the Mandarin's rings, acknowledging them as advanced technology. However, Tony doubts they have time to create another suppressor. S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives to confront Mandarin but is quickly defeated, prompting Tony's team to intervene. Despite their efforts, they too are overpowered. Howard observes the situation from the armory and notices that the McLuhan energies aren't coming from Mandarin. Suddenly, a massive spaceship appears, firing a ray that incapacitates Mandarin. Hawkeye watches from a distance, expressing hope for the newcomers, and Howard realizes the vessel is of McLuhan origin. In Wakanda, Black Panther prepares his Quinjet as the team regroups with Fury and Romanoff, assuming a full-scale invasion. Meanwhile, aboard the spaceship, Mandarin is held captive until a McLuhan arrives, demanding he surrender the 10 rings. Despite his resistance, the Overlord intervenes, seizing the rings and initiating a battle with the heroes. As smaller battleships emerge, the heroes engage in combat with rescue embarrassed when Fury saves her. The Overlord, impressed by their skills, decides to test Jean's worthiness and teaches him the ring's origin, foretelling a peace Jean might offer through dictatorship. The heroes plan to use a disruptor field, but find themselves teleported to an arena with Jean. The Overlord pits them against his champions, including an unstoppable Berserker. The heroes use strategy to overcome the Berserker, noticing fluctuations in his energy. Tony traps the Berserker's hammer, allowing them to defeat him. However, the enraged Overlord prepares to unleash his full fury on Earth. As the McLuhan ship sends more destroyers into the city, Pepper attempts to convey something important to Tony amidst the chaos. Jean tries to negotiate with the Overlord to spare Earth, to no avail. Amidst the battle, Fury, Widow, and Hawkeye rejoin, aiding the heroes. Virgil Potts directs evacuation efforts, saved by Pepper and Cogneo. With the destroyers vanquished, the heroes regroup at the armory, where Howard warns of the disruptor's imprecision. Impressed, the Overlord dispatches Ultimo, an alien protector robot. Unable to hack the alien tech, Iron Man leads the distraction while others target Ultimo's feet. Hulk joins the fray, smashing Ultimo as Iron Man detonates it from within. Despite their victory, the ship unleashes a devastating beam. Panther arrives in his Quinjet to rescue the heroes, who war to strategize. Meanwhile, the Overlord, believing Earth has surrendered, prepares to destroy it. With time running out, Tony devises a risky plan for both teams. Team B, comprised of Hawkeye, Widow, Panther, and Fury, is tasked with infiltrating the McLuhan ship to overload its reactor cores. Meanwhile, Team A, including Iron Man, War Machine, Rescue, and Hulk, confronts the Overlord directly. As Rescue attempts to convey something crucial to Tony, they are interrupted by the urgency of the situation. Howard takes charge of connecting the disruptor to the Stark 1 satellite, aiming to target the McLuhan ship. As the Overlord prepares to annihilate Earth, the teams spring into action. In a fierce battle, Jean is swiftly incapacitated by the Overlord before Iron Man and his team enters the shuttle bay, engaging the McLuhan forces to clear their path. Team B breaches the ship's defenses, encountering resistance as they make their way to the reactor core. Despite facing opposition from McLuhan defenders, they manage to plant explosives on the core and set the timers before escaping through a vent. Meanwhile, Team A confronts the Overlord at the throne, where Hulk engages in a brutal fistfight. However, the Overlord's use of the rings proves formidable, ultimately reverting Hulk back to Banner. The armored heroes find themselves struggling against the Overlord's powerful weaponry. As the McLuhan Overlord mocks Iron Man's threats, Howard struggles to calibrate the satellite. Tony steps in and uses Extremis to direct the satellite's beam, hitting the Overlord and disabling his rings. With the heroes united, they unleash their unibeams, but Fury warns them of the impending ship explosion. Jean, reclaiming his rings, fires at the Overlord and, at Tony's urging, teleports out with Rescue, War Machine, and Banner. Iron Man lands a punch on the Overlord just as the ship's power core detonates. Amidst the chaos, Tony's damaged helmet reveals his identity to the crowd, followed by the unmasking of Rescue and War Machine. Rhodey's mother expresses relief and Howard arrives, joining the unmasked heroes. Panther, Fury, Hawkeye, and Black Widow commend Tony's plan. Pepper attempts to tell Tony something, but he hugs her warmly. As they think about Mandarin's whereabouts, the helicarrier reappears. Meanwhile, Mandarin reflects in his forest retreat, acknowledging a new purpose to protect rather than rule. The heroes head back home, dealing with the shock of revealing their identities, but feeling hopeful about what lies ahead. If you made it this far, let's reveal the reason behind dropping the Iron Man Armored Adventures series. The show just didn't gain enough popularity to justify its production costs, and to be honest, the toys weren't just selling well. Interestingly, its last episode aired around the same time as the final episode of Avengers, Earth Mightiest Heroes. It seems like Marvel TV was clearing the way for their next slate of animated shows, and apparently it was replaced with Transformers Prime. So that will be it from us. If you enjoyed the video, let us know which Iron Man suit is your favorite. Also, do not forget to leave us a like and subscribe to our channel for similar content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at the next one.